Welcome to episode 27 of Inside Politics, for teens, by teens, where I explore the politics and issues impacting our generation. I'm your host, Christina Li, and today I'm focusing on the intersection of higher education and public policy. For this, I've invited Ryan Liu, a student at Yale Law School. He also holds a master's in higher education from Oxford University and is a passionate advocate for higher education access. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation and for all the work you're doing.
Of course. So why are you passionate about access to higher education?
Yeah, so I think first it starts from a personal background. I am the first generation, first person in my family to go to college. And I actually started at a community college right nearby my hometown, like 30 minutes away. And it ended up being the only place I could really afford coming straight out of high school as coming from a low income background. And just starting off in community college now, 8-9 years ago, and being surrounded by a lot of people from similar backgrounds, also first generation, but also veterans, single parents, people who might have formerly served time but now wanted to get an education and do well for the world, really just made me see about how education can be transformative. So that got me interested in higher education from a beginning stage, and it's kind of driven me the last 7 or 8 years in terms of my career and even my interest in law school right now.
That's amazing. So I understand that you've worked at the Biden Foundation also for the College Promise campaign to advance community colleges. Could you talk a little bit about your work with those?
Yeah, of course. So back in 2015, during the Obama administration, the administration was pushing for a thing called America's College Promise, which was meant to make 2 years of community college free on a last dollar basis. So they would cover tuition after state and federal financial aid were taken into account. So effectively, most people would be getting 2 years of their higher education provided for. That didn't go much farther in Congress because of how gridlocked it was. But there was actually a lot of movement on the individual state level and local levels, both in Republican and Democratic states, surprisingly. So Republican states like Tennessee and Arkansas to like or Republican states like Arkansas and Tennessee to Democratic states like Oregon and New York were all passing their own legislation to make higher education free. So the College Promise campaign, which I worked as a policy fellow, was working with a lot of state and local policymakers to kind of create these programs and advocate for them. So that was an exciting time, and sort of the same work continued at the Biden Foundation, where I worked on their education pillar to kind of advance the idea of affordable community colleges as well. And that's something you're still seeing a lot of movement nowadays in all different state and local levels.
Awesome. So how have these experiences influenced your pursuit of law at Yale Law School?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is interrelated. In terms of higher education, so much of it is dependent on the law, even from controversial topics nowadays like admissions and having racial conscious admissions procedures. That touches a lot about the legal system and the law, equal protection, due process. And I think understanding how you make education more equitable and accessible also requires you to have an understanding of how the legal system operates.
Understood. So I guess for the fellow teens out there who are also interested in this issue, how can they start getting involved?
Yeah. So on one hand, there's the community organizing bit of it. If your focus is on higher education access, what I did back when I was in community college was not only help with the fundraising efforts to create scholarships for people who have less opportunities. So I helped out with this fundraising gala that my community college put on that raised over $1 million to create scholarships for low-income students. But there's also the political, I think, advocacy part where depending on the school, you can be involved in the student government and work with individual students, or even potentially lobby legislators, contact your local congressman or congresswoman, and then try and set up meeting with a legislative assistant to talk about what higher education priorities your school and you have. And one of my, I think, most interesting experiences was the year after my first year of community college. I actually went to Capitol Hill to be an intern for the congressman who was co-chair of the California Public Higher Education Caucus. And I think I was the only community college intern I met that entire summer in DC, working on Capitol Hill. So just introducing these less than common perspectives into these places where people make decisions, I think is a pretty big, impactful way to start making a difference from an early age.
Yeah, definitely. So I also understand that you worked as national chair for AAPI Millenials for Hillary in 2016. So now that we're approaching the 2020 presidential election, and we also see members of Gen Z being very active on social media and engaging in this sort of like a similar sort of grassroots activism, could you speak about how your work then is still applicable to now?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, in 2016, I had worked on the Clinton campaign, started off as an intern, and then I joined the Millennial Victory Council to help advise the campaign on millennial outreach. And then I, working alongside the Asian American outreach director, started and led a coalition group called AAPI Millenials for Hillary, so targeting young Asian American voters to support Hillary Clinton back in 2016. And I think a lot of the lessons there are still applicable now, just in the idea of how you build a wide coalition. We were specifically focused on Asian Americans and young Asian Americans at the time, but same lessons apply, that you meet people where they are, you see what issues are important to them. You don't just assume that they're going to support someone because of a Democratic or Republican leaning, but because that this person appeals to issues they care about. So I think, yeah, just meeting people where they are and really focusing on the issues that matters to them, and realizing that it's going to be different for them versus like other people. But still, I think ultimately understanding that I think no matter what background you're from, everyone kind of wants the same things in life. You want to be able to provide for your family. You want your kids to have a better future than you do. You want to be able to just have a good living. And I think these are the things that kind of bind everyone, and it's common to everyone regardless of their background.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see everybody next time on Inside Politicz. Hi, everyone. This is Christina. Thank you so much for watching Inside Politicz, and please feel free to check out the rest of the interviews on my channel. See you next time.